everyone. Well, it's now time to look at a much better Star Trek movie, and that is Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. Now, out of all the even-numbered Star Trek films, this one is my second favorite out of the bunch, and it really is a good movie. So yeah, this movie was the second and sadly last Star Trek film to be directed by Nicholas Meyer. But hey, it's a really good movie. Definitely much more, memorable than the last film, which was just durr. But anywho, so basic plot of Star Trek VI is that Sulu's now a captain, finally, and he's now in command of the USS Excelsior, which of course gets a little shaken up when they, encounter Shockwave from the Klingon moon Praxis, which of course, pretty much, exploded. And of course the Klingons said that it was an incident caused by overmining and insufficient safety precautions. Wow. That's kind of shocking, don't you think? But anywho, so because of all that, basically, the space equivalent of the Berlin Wall is coming down. Yep, the Federation and the Klingons are now gonna open up peace talks. Yay! And so the Enterprise is sent to, bring over Chancellor Gorkon, played by David Warner, who of course was in Star Trek V. But of course, unlike his performance in that movie, he delivers a great performance in this one as Chancellor Gorkon. It's just fantastic. And of course, we also get a new helmsman, Lieutenant Valeris, played by Kim Cattrall, who you guys probably all know from Sex and the City and whatnot. Although the real kicker was that originally they wanted Kirstie Alley to reprise the role of Saavik, but of course that didn't work out as well, so just bringing her back, but renaming her character, they just decided to bring in someone else in order to play the new character. Hey, works well for me, all things considered. So anywho, they meet up with Chancellor Gorkon and his and his daughter Azit Bohr, his military advisor Brigadier Kurla, and General Chang as Chief of Staff, played by Christopher Plummer. Now, bear with me here, folks, okay? Christopher Plummer plays a Klingon in Star Trek. Now, let's do something interesting here, okay? Christopher Plummer was in one of my all-time favorite movies, The Sound of Music. Who directed The Sound of Music? Robert Wise. And what other movie did Robert Wise direct? Star Trek The Motion Picture. And the next one after that was Star Trek II The Wrath of Khan, directed by Nicholas Meyer. And of course, who directed this movie? Nicholas Meyer. And who plays the Klingon bad guy in this movie? Christopher Plummer. So, yes, I pretty much made probably one of the most interesting Star Trek connections of all time. Yep. All revolving around one man, Christopher Plummer. Man, am I good at these things or what? So anywho, Gorkon and the others have dinner with Kirk and company on the Enterprise. Of course, they have, probably a little too much Romulan ale, which of course is still illegal in Star Trek VI. But the things go a little crazy when, of course, the Enterprise thinks that they fired on Chancellor Gorkon's ship. And then, of course, the gravity is disabled, two men in suits pretty much, blast the Klingons. One of them loses his arm. And, of course, then they kill Chancellor Gorkon. Of course, what should happen with Kirk and Bones going over there? And they actually try to help, and Bones actually tries to save Chancellor Gorkon, but it doesn't work out all as well. So Kirk and Bones are placed on trial for the assassination of Chancellor Gorkon, with an ancestor for defending them. And who plays his ancestor Worf? Yep, Michael Dorn, who plays Worf on Next Generation, and then on Deep Space Nine. Interesting, isn't it? But still, Kirk and Bones are found guilty and are sentenced to Rura Penthe, where, well, of course, well, they try to escape thanks to a shapeshifter named Martia. But of course, it doesn't work out all that well because Martia had set them up so that she can get a pardon. But of course, then she gets, well, vaporized, really. And the Kirk and Bones are beamed back up thanks to Spock, who placed a tracking device on Kirk's shoulder before he went to board Gorkon's ship, which is nice. And of course, they're still trying to figure out who did all this. And of course, they find the two men that stole the suits, but unfortunately, they're dead. And so Kirk, Bones, and Spock come up with a genius plan to find out who did this, and it turns out it was Valeris, who was actually part of a conspiracy group trying to make sure that the Klingon Federation peace talks didn't go over so well. And so Spock mind melds with Valeris, and we find out who are the other conspirators. Romulan Ambassador Nonclus, General Chang, and of course Admiral Cartwright from Star Trek IV. Busted! So anywho, they then contact Sulu and the Excelsior, and he tells them that the peace conference has been relocated to Khitomer, to the Khitomer outpost near the Romulan border. Yeah, sound familiar? Mm-hmm. So anywho, the peace process goes forward, but unfortunately, Kirk and the Enterprise crew need to stop any more assassinations, and of course they get blasted by Chang's bird of prey, which can fire while cloaked. Oh boy, that's not good. And of course, Sulu and the Excelsior then show up to help them out, and then of course, Kirk and then Spock and Bones then come up with this torpedo that can pretty much blast Chang's ship apart. Well, sure, just blast it anyway. And so then Kirk and some of the other Enterprise crew members beam down along with Sulu and some of the crew members from the Excelsior. Except for Tuvok, which really sucks. And so then the peace process is saved, everyone's happy, and of course the bad news is that the Enterprise needs to return back to Space Dog in order for it to be decommissioned. And so with that, it's the end of the era for the original series crew, or original series cast, I should say. And then I fly off into the space sunset, and we see everyone's signatures, and well, of course, with the success of Next Generation, we pretty much know that this film franchise is going to continue anyway. So that's Star Trek VI, and let me tell you, this movie's actually really good. I mean, after all, this movie came out when Star Trek turned the ripe old age of 25. So, yeah. And of course, well, Star Trek V shunner had a fear that he killed the film franchise, but thankfully that didn't happen. Of course, it's really the big kicker is that originally Star Trek VI was supposed to show the crew as cadets and blah blah blah. But unfortunately, it didn't work out as well, and of course, Harv Bennett decided to bow out of Star Trek, so ultimately Leonard Nimoy produced this film, which is good. And of course, once again, Nicholas Meyer just flat out rocks in the director's chair of this movie. So, with that all said and done, let's look at the film factoids of this movie, shall we? Okay, here we go. Okay. Portraits of American President Abraham Lincoln and Vulcan philosopher Surak are visible in the officer's mess. Surak is the man who transformed Vulcan society into one based on logic and control over one's emotions. The subtitle, The Undiscovered Country, comes from Hamlet's famous to be or not to be soliloquy, as do many of General Chang's quotes. Two more of the obscure lines Chang speaks during the final battle between the Klingons and the Enterprise are, "Our revels now have ended," from The Tempest, and "The game's afoot," from Henry V. The welcome speech that Kirk, McCoy, and the others receive on arriving on Rura Penthe is an homage to a speech made by Colonel Saito to the British POWs in The Bridge on the River Kwai. The name of the prison planet, Rura Penthe, is a reference to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. It is the name of the slave labor camp that inspired Captain Nemo's rage against society and that was the location of his death. And finally, Spock, played by Leonard Nimoy, obviously, tells the crew, an ancestor of mine maintained that if you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. Or solution, as it says here. The ancestor, Spock quotes as Sherlock Holmes, another fictional character well versed in logic. Nimoy and co-star Christopher Plummer have both played Holmes on stage and screen. Also, director Nicholas Meyer is the author of several Sherlock Holmes novels, including The 7% Solution, considered by many to be the best Sherlock Holmes story not written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Interesting, isn't it? Another little film factoid that, well, I didn't want to read about because it was in the first 5 that I mentioned, is that originally The Undiscovered Country was supposed to be the title of Star Trek II. But of course, and which made sense because, The Undiscovered Country would be death, especially for Spock. But in this case, The Undiscovered Country that they're talking about in this film is the future, which is, well, an undiscovered country, if you get my drift. So, anywho, that's my review of Star Trek VI. I'll be back in a little while to talk about Star Trek Generations, the first film involving the Star Trek Next Generation cast, as well as a couple cast members from the original series. But oh well, what the heck. So anyway, until then, live long and prosper. Peace out. Bye.